Hello everybody. Now in this brief video what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about climate graphs, and in particular I'm going to tell you how you describe the climate of a particular area using a climate graph. Now the example we're going to use for this is the climate graph for a place called Barrow in Alaska, which is of course in the tundra, so we'd expect to see low precipitation, low temperatures here. However, climate graphs can be produced of course for any biome anywhere in the world, any location in the world, and the structure of these graphs is always the same. As you can see, it comprises of a line graph and it comprises of a bar chart shown together on one graph. Along the bottom you can see that you've got the months of the year through from January to December, denoted by the first letters in this case. Up the left hand side you've got an axis which shows precipitation in millimetres, and on the right hand side you've got temperature in degrees Celsius. Now every climate graph comprises of a line graph, and that line graph tells us what the average monthly temperature is for a particular location. So in this case each dot which appears above every month is your average monthly temperature, and those are joined together to show a trend, a line graph. And there is also a bar graph along the bottom there, as you can see, and that shows the average monthly precipitation for the location that you're looking at. Now, if we were going to use this climate graph to describe the climate of Barrow, there are certain things that you should do. If you're asked a question like this in an exam, there's always a procedure you should go through to maximise your marks, to make sure that you're getting full marks. The first thing that you want to do is you want to have a good look at that graph, carefully look at it, and describe the overall trend, the overall pattern that is being shown by that graph. Now what I mean by that is you're going to want to look at the shape of the line graph, you're going to want to look at the bar graph as well, and just briefly give an overall trend for what is occurring in terms of the climate. So if we look at that line graph in this case, we can see that temperatures are actually low all year round, although they do increase in the summer months. So they're higher in the summer months than they are in the winter, but as you can see, they're below 5 degrees for the whole year. So the overall trend would be something like temperatures are low all year round, although they are slightly higher in the summer months. For rainfall, the rainfall in the tundra typically, and indeed Barrow is no different here, the rainfall is low throughout the year. So throughout the year you've got low rainfall, and that's it. You've described the overall climatic trend for this particular location. It's as simple as that. Now the next thing you want to do is you want to give it a wee bit more detail than that overall trend. Now the best way to do that, and in fact the way you should do that, is that you should have a look at the graph and you should identify where the highest figures for temperature and rainfall are, and then also what the lowest figures are as well. Now a key critical piece of advice for describing a climate graph is that you must use figures. You must use figures from the graph in order to get full marks in a question like this. To describe the climate well using a climate graph, you must use figures and data from the graph. So to give you an example of what we'll be looking at, if we have a look at our graph here, our highest temperature is this dot here, and we can see that that's in the month of July. And we can also see by looking across to the axis to the right here that that's around about 5 degrees. So we would say that the highest temperature is in July at 5 degrees Celsius. So that's our highest temperature. We do the same for rainfall. Now, tundra climate graphs are sometimes very hard to read the rainfall because there's so little of it, but we can see that the highest rainfall is here, in the month of August, and it's quite difficult to read off the graph here, this particular graph, but it's around about 30 millimetres of rainfall in August is the average rainfall for August. So we'd say that the highest rainfall or the highest precipitation is in August, where there was 30 millimetres of rainfall for August. You do the same for the lowest figures. So in this case, the lowest temperature, you could say it's either January or February, or you could say January and February. But if we look at January there's our lowest temperature. And we look across to the y-axis here, and you can see it's around about minus 27 degrees Celsius. So you would say the lowest temperature is minus 27 degrees in January. And again, we do the same for precipitation. And in this case, it's very difficult to read what the rainfall total is. So we could get away with saying something along the lines of between March and May, there is hardly any rainfall at all in Barrow, Alaska. So we're doing very well. We've picked up a lot of marks just through going through the process of talking about the overall trends in temperature and rainfall, and then using the figures, using the data from the graph to say what the highest and the lowest temperatures are and what the highest and the lowest precipitation is. But we can go a wee bit further as well, and it's always a very good idea to read off or to work out rather what the temperature range is for a particular area using the climate graph. Now, what the temperature range is basically you take your highest temperature and you take your lowest temperature and you take one from the other. You take one from the other to give you what the range of temperature is. Now, in tundra environments such as this one, you can get a very, very high temperature range. A low temperature is low all year round. In the winter, as you've seen, it can be, unbelievably cold, bitterly cold. I mean, average temperature of minus 27 degrees in this case in January, and that's unbelievably low temperatures. In the summer, though, you can get quite warm days in the summer, and therefore the average temperature is still only 5 degrees in this case. It's obviously a bit warmer, so you get a very big temperature range. In this case, if we take our highest temperature of 5 degrees and our lowest temperature of minus 27 degrees, you take the lowest temperature from the highest temperature. That gives us a temperature range of 32 degrees Celsius. So you would write that down as well. The temperature range is 32 degrees Celsius, and that would get you another nice wee mark. There's one other thing that you could do with this climate graph. You could take all of the figures, all of the temperature figures perhaps, and you could work out what the average temperature is, or you could take all of the rainfall totals and add them up to give total precipitation for the year. So either of those things would also gain you another mark if you were asked about this in an exam. Okay, so I'm just going to summarise what we've just been talking about there with describing a climate graph, just to go over what I've just talked about there to hopefully make sure that it's nice and clear. So if you were asked a question in an exam, describe the climate of Barrow, Alaska, usually that would be worth something like 4 marks. Here's the sort of thing that you want to be writing about. So first of all, you want to talk about the overall trend, the overall pattern for temperature and rainfall throughout the year. So in the case of the graph that I've just been describing to you, that we've just been looking at, you would say something like the rainfall is low all year round, temperatures are low all year round, but do increase in the summer months. And that is a very nice, brief, but comprehensive, it covers everything, comprehensive description of the overall trend and pattern. So rainfall is low all year round, temperatures are lower all year round, but do increase in the summer months. Happy days. The highest figures for temperature and rainfall in the year, that's the next thing you're going to want to talk about. And in the case of our example here, the highest rainfall was in August at 30 millimetres, and the highest temperature was 5 degrees in July. Okay. Similarly, we want to do the same for the lowest figures for temperature and rainfall in the year. And from our graph, the lowest temperature was minus 27 degrees in January, and between March and May, there is barely any rainfall at all. It's close to zero. And finally, you want to perhaps look at the temperature range, and you might also put in the total precipitation or the average temperature or something like that as well. And in this case, in this wee example, I'm going to work out what the temperature range is, and I'm going to work out what the total precipitation for the year is. In this case, the temperature range for Barrow, Alaska is 32 degrees, and the total precipitation is about 140 millimetres. And in that case, it's very difficult to work out what the total precipitation is because some of the average monthly figures are very low. But in those sorts of circumstances, you would get a bit of leeway either way, as long as you are, relatively accurate, quite close to the actual figure, then you'd get a mark for that as well. So that's that. That's how we describe a climate graph. I hope that made sense. Remember, as always, if you have any questions, if there's still some things you're not so sure about, please send me a message on Teams or send me an email and I'll clear it up for you. Thanks very much and see you soon.